Hey, sports card fans, it's John Wade Boggs fan here with Don Field of Dreams Cards, back with another episode of Two Guys, One Hobby. How are you, Don?
I'm doing well, brother. How are you?
Very good. I finally made my first card purchases since the National.
Saw that.
I've
Didn't you
just
make
been
a
a
video on
little,
that?
I've been in a little funk rut, obviously, with all the whole house moving and all that stuff. I just didn't really have a lot of spare money for the hobby, but
So
just
you must have sold the other house, and now you're buying cards.
well, it's close. So
Yeah. Well, you're
the
banking on it. You're like,
yes,
all right, I'm good to
no,
go.
settlement is next Friday, so it's all good. But
So a
it's
week
not
from
just that.
tomorrow when we're recording this, because they won't see it
Yes,
till Sunday or Monday or
yeah, that's
whenever
true.
you
Yeah, it'll be
record
that
this.
week in a few days. Um, but I've heard it from others. There seem to be maybe in a little bit of a rut. I don't know what it is. They're just not maybe buying as much. But anyway, we're here to bring on our guest. Really happy to have him on. He's a good friend of both
Yep,
of ours. I had the
absolutely.
pleasure of rooming with him for a few days at this year's National. Really got to know him a little bit better. I know, Don, you and him have been become really close friends over the last year or two.
Yeah,
Really
we
happy
have.
to have him
And I
on.
roomed with him in Strongsville. So I have a
Yep,
question. Did he play the fan app on his phone all night?
the fan app.
Yeah,
I
like
don't
a
know if he
fan
did. If he
playing.
did, it didn't bother me because my wife does something similar. But
Gotcha.
with that, let's bring on Chris from Missouri.
Hey
The,
guys.
o- the
How
only
you
Chris
doing,
in the
Chris?
whole state of Missouri.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's right. That's right.
Yep.
Thanks for having me on. My first question, though, I have a question.
Yeah.
Who did you have on last? And how many guests have you had on?
This is technically episode 11.
So you're our 10th guest because our first episode we didn't have a guest.
Okay,
That's
so
true.
out of those 10 guests, why did it take me so long to get on here? Because you both just said I spent the night with both of you guys.
Well,
I
that's
know you're
why I have not picked you because I spent
okay.
the night
Just
with you.
checking.
Yep.
Just checking.
We
I
can't
just
play
can't go
favorites.
there. I can't go there on what
All right,
happened.
but I know your sleeping habits. So both of you.
Yeah, and I know you like
It's
to cuddle, which was a little strange, Chris, but
yeah.
Yeah,
I took one for the team.
yeah.
What happens in Chicago stays in Chicago. So we'll just leave it at that.
Okay, good.
So, all right. Well, what we're going to be, we sort of have a topic of what we're going to be talking about here. Some of it may go off in different areas, but all three of us, we were talking prior to this, figuring out what we're going to do for this episode. And as we got started to talk, we realized that the three of us have been collecting for quite some time. I know it's 45 years for me. Don, it's a little bit less for you, right? 42 or so?
So I was 9, so it would have been 47 years ago for me.
47. Okay, so longer than me. And Chris, you probably have maybe been collecting for a little bit longer.
Probably not. 47 or so 47 years for me. I was 10.
Which would have been, we're the same age, so I
We're the
started in
same age.
76.
So
Okay.
I was 76, but it was late 76. I can remember it being
All right.
late
And yeah, my first cards were 78. So as we started talking about how long we've been collecting, we realized that the cards that we got as a kid, the first cards, the first packs, either trading with friends, however we got our first cards, those cards are now vintage cards.
Correct.
And so we thought we would do sort of maybe like an origin of how we started, the first cards that we got, and then just to take things from there. So Chris, you seem to have a pretty interesting story on how you started collecting, getting cards and stuff like that. So if you want to talk about that.
Okay. Well, I shared some of this story before, and some of it I probably haven't on another channel. But I grew up very poor as a kid, and I'm talking as a kid. When I was young, didn't know I was poor or anything like that. Uh, Talked a lot of sports with my dad, and even as a young kid, and I'm talking 6, 7 years old. And when I was eight, around eight, we moved from Greasy Creek, Kentucky, to Lamont, Missouri, which is a small town about an hour away from where I live now. And we lived in a small subdivision where there was lots of kids. You can Sandlot seems to I bring Sandlot to mind where we'd pick up and play baseball. We had a lot outside the church that we'd put bases up. When it was football season, we had goals put up, and there was enough kids to just to play. And there was the kids older than me at the time, and so I'm 8 years old, and stayed there until 18 till I went away to college. But during those 10 years, kids older than me grew up, went away, and gave me their cards. But before that, when I was 7 or 8, and when I was 8 and 9, the older kids were collecting baseball cards, and I really wanted to be a part of that. And every once in a while, they'd give me a card, or I'd do, I'd run an errand for them or do something. They'd give me a card, and I got a little creative at times, and I'd find a magazine, an old magazine, and I remember Bobby Bonds being in this magazine, and he had a picture the size of a baseball card. So I found a shoebox cardboard, and I cut that thing out, and I glued that picture to that cardboard, and that was my first card. And I traded that card to an 18-year-old kid. Now the 18-year-old kid knew exactly what he was doing.
Okay.
And he gave me a Burt Blyleven card. Okay. A 1972 Burt Blyleven that I thought was a rookie card, So I was now in, I had a card. And so, I just, and it's a Pirates card, John. So, kind of have that connection with you, but we just didn't have the money to open up packs and that kind of stuff. And I remember when I was 10, getting a lawnmower. In that summer of it was 77. In 77, I got a lawnmower. And I don't know if you guys have Kmart stores where you guys are, but there used to be a Kmart around.
Yeah.
You could put stuff on layaway. And but some of my income at that time was helping my mom and dad get by too, because they were both working, and everything was just, I guess, tough, but I didn't know it, and we put our clothes on layaway, and I went and paid for my clothes. I put baseball cards on layaway. I put a pack or two of baseball cards. And, I'd like to tell you that I think I would remember who I opened up first, but I do remember that there was an older card that I ended up having on layaway. It was the, Turn Back the Clock, whenever those came out.
Yes.
This was
77s. Yep.
Yeah. And I got a Ralph Kiner Turn Back the Clock. So another Pirates card where
where he's in the dugout, right?
Stepping out of the dugout with the bat. And so, I got a pack of cards or two, but I still wanted cards, and mom picked me up some cards on accident at a garage sale where she bought a crate of quilts that were kind of smelly, but they were, she thought she'd take them home, wash them, hang them up on the line, they'd be good. In the bottom of that crate was a lot of cards. And they were older cards, but whoever knew what they had been picked through or something probably, but I didn't know that at the time, and I learned about cards by looking at the back of them. And, so during that same time, I found the hostess cards, and my mom again knew we couldn't afford cards, but we could afford Twinkies, right? And
Yeah.
and at the box of the back of the box of Twinkies, you get 3 cards, and you guys remember that, right?
Yep.
and
Absolutely.
and so she would, and my dad, I don't think he wanted, I know he didn't want to spend money on cards, he did for me, but this was my way for my mom to kind of circumvent that. And so she created a snack drawer in our
Yeah.
kitchen, and the Twinkies or the ding dongs or whatever the other stuff were called, they'd get
Yep.
home, she would open up the boxes and put them in that drawer.
Yep.
And I think that's probably a little bit why I'm fat now, but she would help me cut out those cards, and so I had those cards too. So
Yep.
that's kind of how I first got started collecting cards. And the first one that I remember opening up though was about 77, late 77 before school started.
Hey, Chris, can I ask
Yep.
you a question? So we're good friends, and I know your story and history, and it's not my place to bring that up. It's your place. But you said earlier how poor you guys were. But in Eastern Kentucky, if people don't know their geography, not far from Cincinnati. So you're a Reds fan, Johnny Bench fan.
Right.
How did you know about him? Did you guys have a TV? You and I are the same age. We didn't have internet. Did you have the rabbit ears? Did you guys have enough money to have a TV? I'm not
Understand?
I'm
No,
just curious.
no,
How did you know
yeah.
about that?
So my dad had a little transistor radio, and he
Okay.
was a huge, huge baseball fan, and he was a Brooklyn Dodger fan growing up. And my grandpa on my dad's side was a huge baseball fan too. And when they would be playing catch, when they'd be playing catch with me, I just, and playing, having a bat and stuff, I would try to imitate. They would tell me how Pete Rose stood or how Johnny Bench batted right-handed, and
So you had never seen their stance. You just went by what your dad
what
and
my
uncle said.
so my dad wanted me to be a pinch hitter. So
Okay.
he would, here's a bat, here, get down like this, and he'd push on me and tell me, and tell me how I needed to swing it.
Why
And
a pinch hitter?
I don't know. I don't know.
That's kind of fascinating.
I
Not a
remember.
shortstop or an everyday player. Son, I just want you to bat one time a game.
Yeah.
That's it.
I'm sorry, a switch hitter. A switch
Oh,
hitter.
Switch.
switch hitter.
Okay.
Okay.
I haven't
I
even
was
had a drink
confused.
yet.
I'm like, who wants their son to be a pinch hitter?
I think he probably knew my limit.
Yeah.
But
Son,
it's
if
funny.
you get one at bat a game, I'm proud of you.
It's funny, Don. I look back at this, and when we lived in Kentucky, and we had this house, didn't have indoor plumbing or running water or anything like that.
Right.
And my neighbor had a basketball goal, but they had a fence between us, which I don't blame them.
That's called a basket. A goal, soccer, and hockey.
Okay, but a basket.
Trying to straighten
Well, so what my dad did is he got my mom's clothes basket, which was circle,
right.
and he cut
Got a
the
hole in it. Yeah.
Yep.
and nailed it up to the side of the house. So so I just I look back at that and think of how how fun I must have had, that kind of stuff. But
My
but
dad
that's-
built
yeah.
our backboard. It was wood. He built it. He nailed it was a real hoop, but not a goal. But I remember this wooden
don't say hoop.
backboard, and he had it like tied onto the railing and just like clang every time he did it.
Well,
Chris-
fast forward a few years when my dad changed jobs and our lives started to change. In our garage, this made me a lot better basketball player. It made me a basketball player. Is we put up took the seat of a chair in the garage, made a backboard, and got 3 clothes hangers, made them a circle, wrapped them in tape, and I played on that thing for hours. But anyway, yeah, that's I got to know about the Cincinnati Reds and became a fan because of that. And I did, I'm sure I watched them over at my grandfather's house. They did well. My grandpa did well. It's just it was a life of a coal miner with my dad,
Right.
And
So you moved to Missouri, and you're a Royals fan now. Like, how do you lose your fandism or passion for one team and switch to another?
Didn't lose it. Never did.
Okay.
Never
So if the
did
Reds
lose
were
it.
playing the Royals in the World Series, who are you rooting for?
It would have been tough. It would have been tough. If so,
To me, it shouldn't be tough. It should be Reds all the way.
well, I when
In
when I
my
got to,
way of
yeah,
thinking.
when I got to be about 10 or 11, I had this neighbor. He was older, and he had a younger brother who was a stud athlete, a couple years older than me,
Okay.
and John and Gary, and they were both Royals fans. And my mom would let me go with them to the bleacher seats and watch Royals baseball. And
So
so
what time period is this? What years?
I'm let's see,
Like late 70s, early
70,
80s?
79, 78, 79.
Okay.
And
So it was the Amos Otis, Frank White,
the
George Brett,
from
Dennis
76
Leonard years.
from 76 to 82 or 3, the Royals won as many games as anybody. They just couldn't
Right.
get past the Yankees.
Right.
And so that's why I wasn't a Cardinal fan. At that time, I lived in the middle of the state. The Cardinals weren't very good, and the Royals were good. So, but I never did switch allegiances. You know, I'm glad they were in different leagues, so I could say the Reds were my favorite National League team and the Royals were my favorite.
But you kind of did. And I'm only doing this because Chris, my buddy, I wouldn't give any other guest
Yeah,
a
go
hard
ahead.
time.
Go ahead. And I got an answer for this too.
You did, because when I asked you if the Reds or Royals, who you picking, you're like, it's a toss-up. I'm like, well, then you're really not the Reds fan you used to be. Maybe you were the big Red Machine fan. But now,
I'm getting ready to say that. My fans and my Reds in 1977 or 78, 79 started to break up.
right.
So, you know, I lose Tony Perez to root for. I lose Joe Morgan to root for, you know, and the Reds, by the time I got to be, you know, 14 years old, the Reds were a former shell of themselves.
Yeah, but you got Tom Seaver from the Mets.
Yeah, but he was from the Mets. You don't think of him as a Red.
True.
But that was my trading card trading stuff. And then another thing, when I got to be a little bit older, and I mean, I've told the story about Miss Dufresne, about mowing her yard, and she paid me with older cards, and this is the first one I know that I got from her, and it'll always be my favorite. I'll never get it graded, and I'll never have it encased or plastic around it. Just
like that.
Like that. But I keep it in my drawer here. But when I got that mower and, you know, started helping mom and dad a little bit, and then dad switched jobs, that's when I started feeling like I got money. And then we have a store here in Middle Missouri called Casey's General Store. I don't know if it gets out your way, but it's, you know, it's a 400 or 500 stores around the area. And I used to mow their yard. Okay. I used to mow their yard, and it wasn't much. You know, had a little median between the road and them, and his grass, and they paid me really well. But I'd also get to go in and get a drink. I don't know if you guys remember seeing these as a kid, but this was in 1970.
RC Cola.
It has 76 stats, but they came out in 77. Okay. And so I collected these, and, you know, I would look through there and put my hands on every one of them until I came up with a Mike Schmidt or a George Brett or whatever, or a Johnny Bench. But my mom and dad knew I liked these too, so they'd go in and, you know, mom would bring me home a Steve Braun, and you know,
from the Twins.
Yeah, and you know, just Milt May, and mom, let me go with you when you go so I can pick these up. And then the next year they started looking like these, and so I collect those, and I have I think I had the complete set at one time, and I still have them forever. And so I collected those as a kid, and then everybody knows about the Kellogg card.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of stuff. And so that was my way of trying to keep up with the kids the older kids. Mom helped me a lot, and then
Hey,
then as
Chris, I
yes, sir.
don't I don't remember the price of Twinkie boxes or ho-hos or whatever, the King Dons, but the cars were on the back. But
Uh-huh.
I remember I've learned this, cello packs were a
I
qu-
saw that, and
Yeah.
I have a buddy that calls them CeeLo packs too. So
but I remember them being a quarter, and I gotta think that the Hostess and Twinkies were more, weren't they?
oh yeah, yeah. The Twinkies were a
Probably a
dollar,
dollar or
Yeah.
something.
But
$1.20. But understand this: she wasn't buying me baseball cards. She
Right.
was
So
buying
take
me
it
that's
out
stuff
of the
for
yeah.
pack.
school. If she'd have brought home those cards to me, I don't know if
Yeah.
Dad would have been so
And,
happy.
and I think those companies did that for a purpose. It was a way to introduce kids to cards without maybe bugging their parents. Hey, can I buy a pack of cards? Well, no, I'm not going to get you a pack of cards. Well, then can I get, so by buying groceries
Some
and foods and
some
snacks,
treats, right?
those
Snacks,
those
right?
companies like Drake's and the
Yeah.
others that craft at one point, a little bit later on, maybe in the 80s,
Yeah,
it was a way for those companies to sort of introduce, because some of them were aligned with Tops, not quite, but they had their own cards, but it was a
but
way to
every
introduce
boy in
them
that
to cards.
era wanted Kellogg's cereal, or they wanted some type of Hostess product.
Right?
Yeah.
It was genius. Did you have Baskin Robbins in your area
Yes,
when you were a kid? Do you
we
remember
do.
the little helmets with ice cream?
I do. I
I
do.
still have those. I have to pull them out of storage. Yeah,
I
I must have every team plus doubles of those little hats that we
We
used
didn't
to
have
have.
any around us. Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about, though, John?
I
Yeah.
do. I do.
Yep.
Yeah.
And yeah, and
Yeah. They're only
we
like
also
about
Oh,
that
they're
big, right?
tiny. They're like
Yeah.
this big.
right.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I've seen them before, but never collected them.
Right. But
So I
yeah,
wanted to bring up something. So I don't know if you guys heard Dick Buckus died today,
Yeah.
I,
and we
can I?
lost Tim Wakefield, and we lost Russ Francis, tight end from the Patriots. But we lost the greatest third baseman of all time. I'm sure you
Yep.
two would agree.
Yeah,
Better than Boggs, better than Brett, right?
I tell
Defensively,
you, today,
absolutely.
playing third base, playing the position, he's a
I
better
agree. Of
player.
course, I'm
Yes.
busting your guys' balls,
Yeah.
Yes.
but yeah, fielding wise, the best ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a cute little Dick Butkus story that kind of relates to this. When we lived in Kentucky, the only vacation that we'd ever take was my mom we'd go drive to Indiana, we'd pack up a 74 Pinto station wagon that had been totaled once, and they bought it, and it was, and pack it up, and we'd go to Indiana. Okay. And in that area, they used to have grocery stores called Marshes, Marsch, I think, or something, but Marshes grocery store. And we stopped and found out that Dick Butkus was signing autographs at this new opening at this Marshes store. So we're on vacation, okay, and see this sign. So we pull into this grocery store and we go wait in line, and we have nothing to get autographed. Okay. And mom goes and finds something. And my dad was a huge fan. Mom, as we're standing in line, mom goes to find some from index cards. And she
Did she
goes
have a
over.
Mickey Mantle ball to get signed by him?
she was a lot smarter than that. But anyway, she goes to like a customer service thing and say, I'm looking for index cards to somebody so we can get some guy to sign it.
Right.
When the guy's standing there and saying, and it's Dick Butkus is standing there, not right with another guy, and mom, of course, is interrupting them, saying, "Hey, I'm looking for this index cards," and the guy, Dick Butkus, says, "Well, who are you trying to get to sign the card? Who are you trying to get to sign it?" She goes, "I don't know, some stupid football player I don't even know." and so he signs an index card
The
to my
stupid
mom
football player?
and to my sister. My sister got an index card, and she's like 9. She doesn't know who he is and doesn't
Right.
care. And here we're standing in line forever, and we don't get his autograph. But after we're done, Mom, here's 2 autographs, but one's to my sister and one's to my mom. But that's so.
I thought
My
you were going
mom,
to say.
my mom
I thought
tells
you,
that one better.
that's cool. I thought you were going to say from the stupid football player.
Yeah.
It might have said that. That would have been a better story.
Right.
Now, was
That's
he
cool.
a player at the time?
No,
Oh, I'm sure.
couldn't have been.
Yeah, I'm sure he'd been retired.
Yeah, he
Okay.
retired.
Gosh,
Jeez, I don't even
this
know.
this
Late
was.
60s, early 70s, right? Maybe even
Okay.
earlier. I'm not
I
good on
think
my football
he was
history.
still popular, but yeah, I'm not so sure what his rookie card is.
Okay.
But this was like 74, so I'm sure he was retired, but still well known
Yeah.
in that area.
Did the two of you know my Jim Palmer story about getting his autograph?
On the plane?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
do.
So
Chris
you
might not.
mentioned an index card
Uh-huh.
that I saw Jim Palmer on a plane. My dad doubted it was him, but that was almost positive. And I got the flight attendant. I said, "Can I go up and see if that's Jim Palmer and get his autograph?" And she's like, "Well, yeah, okay, that's fine." Well, I didn't have anything to sign, so my dad had this index card, some paperwork that he had with him, and it was written on one side. Some of them have lines on one side and blank on the other.
Right.
On the side with the lines, he had some notes taken or whatever. So he said, "This is all I have." So I flipped it over. So I still have the index card, and it's a to John. So best wishes, Jim Palmer, 88. It was from 1988 is when I had the encounter, and I have it. It's stored, but I have it framed and stuff. And if you look really closely, you can see some writing through the other side of the index card
Oh,
because
really?
that's all we had. I don't know what is written on it because it's all mounted now, but that's all I had with me. But it was Jim Palmer, and he was sitting in first class, and we were back in coach. And today they probably wouldn't allow it. Hey, me going up to
Sure.
first class and bothering someone and stuff. But this was 1988. It was a lot different. And
Right.
yeah.
So here's a guy. I'll show a history of my past, my childhood. Most people have no idea who this guy is. Ed Kirkpatrick.
Oh yeah. You know who he
okay.
played for first?
The Angels, then the Royals.
Oh, okay.
But yes, I knew you were going there. So he lived in my hometown, and his son was the same age as me. So his son would come to school and bring all this great stuff, like autographs, and a lot of them weren't real, but it was still awesome. Would bring all this stuff home, and his son was a heck of a baseball player. And I remember, he would come to. I was in elementary school, so I was like in 4th or 5th grade, and I remember this game. His son beamed this kid right in the face.
Ooh.
And Ed was in the stands. He had cowboy boots on, which Western Pennsylvania, you don't wear cowboy boots. It was like, what the hell is this guy wearing? And I just remember going out in the field, taking care of the kid. And this guy ended up, I don't know what happened to him. He became paralyzed and he's since passed away. But God, I'll never forget him coming to my school as an elementary kid,
Oh yeah.
Just, that stuff doesn't happen today. And it wasn't planned. The school didn't set it up. He just showed up to pick up his kid and came into the cafeteria and hung out with us all and had lunch and just would bring us all kinds of gifts. And,
Right.
times have changed, man. That's what's the shame of it all. And I know I'm sounding like the old man, but it was just simpler.
I know. With today, with the kids starting off today, you're either you're I don't know, the packs today, the cost of packs are to get in, to just buy cards, or even if you get into breaks or all this stuff and trading. And my beginning story was in 1988 was my, or 78 was my first year. And my parents would give me, or my dad would give me 50 cents a week for our allowance. And pretty much we spent it all at the local corner store Sunday after church. My
Right.
dad would go in and get a paper, and my sister and I, with our 50 cents, they had it wasn't penny candy store, but it had, you could buy some gum or this or that, and they had some baseball cards. And they had regular packs, they had cello packs, comic books, just little things for kids and stuff.
Yeah.
And so I didn't spend the 50 cents on cards all the time. Now I think, and I keep forgetting, I think the packs of 78 tops, I want to say, I think cello packs were 35 cents.
That's what I was going to guess, John. Like, I think they maybe went up a
the
dime
packs
in 2
themselves
years.
were 20 cents or something.
Yeah.
20 or 25 cents a pack, and then like 35, maybe it's 25 and 35. I forget. I wrote it down one time, but I forget. But anyway, I couldn't get like 2 cello packs with my 50 cents. I could maybe get 2 packs and maybe have a little bit left. Sometimes I wanted to get a comic book for 25 cents or something.
Or
So it wasn't always
candy
cards,
or whatever, right?
78, and I can still remember the look of the pack with the red and the catcher and stuff like that,
Yep.
and opening up the packs of 78 tops. And that's how I never really, it wasn't until, oh boy, I'd say probably the early 80s until I did any type of trading, flipping. And even then I didn't do a whole lot of trading. And I didn't have, like, there weren't too many of my friends that collected cards. It was just something that I enjoyed doing. I liked, I would watch a little bit of baseball on TV. But there's just, I don't know, there was something about the cards that I wasn't a huge baseball fan. And my family, my dad's side of the family, I think they were mostly Phillies fans, although my one great uncle was a huge Yankees fan. But mainly on TV, I remember it was, the late 70s Phillies teams.
I
Big
just remember
McBride,
the
I
All-Star
remember.
game too. Like, I'd be outside playing catch with my brother, this little black and white TV, and it was like the All-Star game. It's like, oh my god, I gotta see
Yeah.
this.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. We had an all-star game, a little league all-star game,
Yeah,
the
we
same
used to have
time
that.
that Freddie Lynn went off, and it
Mm.
was it was not little league, it was pony league then or something
Right.
a little bit older. But I remember being supposed to be on deck, and I was a catcher, so I didn't have my shin guards off. I still had my shin guards off with the helmet on and stuff. And I'm listening to Freddie Lynn hit a home run, and I'm getting yelled at to, hey, you got to get up here, kind of stuff. It's little things like that you remember.
Yeah. So did you become a switch hitter, Chris, in Little League and
Not
stuff?
not at all. Not
No,
at all.
he became a pinch hitter.
Yeah. Well,
Just what
I-
his dad
I-
wanted him to be.
I became pinched hit 4, but
yeah.
There you go.
so John, I should have. I probably should have, but I didn't. I wasn't fast. I mean, I wasn't. I was slow.
Would you
I'd
say
catch
you
it.
were fat?
Yeah. No, I was.
Oh,
I was,
you weren't
I was,
fat back then.
I were not fat. I was not. But so when I got a little bit older, I'm talking 12, 13 years old. I mentioned him earlier. He was the younger brother of the big older guy that used to take us to the ball game.
Right.
Well, he was quite a baseball player, and he was the same guy that went to Germany for a month, and the summer, and I mowed his yards and got Mr. Frange cards. But he was a heck of a baseball player at a young age, and he was 2 years older than me. And what we would do is we'd get a tennis ball, and we'd get it 35 feet away, not too far away at all. And we would pick a team, and we'd have to bat the lineup of the team. So let's say he chose the 75. Let's say he chose the Pirates, the 70 or the 80 Pirates at the time, or whatever. You would go through with the leadoff batter and all the way through. And so if the next batter was left-handed, you had to bat left-handed. and John was 2 years older than me, and he threw hard, and I learned how to. That made me a lot better player. But they came the newspaper out of the town, about 30,000 people. John was playing Legion ball, and he was 16 years old, and he was a phenom. I mean, the Legion team was really good with a lot of players that went on to play college and get drafted in the pros. But at 16 years old, he was batting number 3 in their lineup. So the sports guy wanted to know, I mean, because he's on this just crazy tear, like, 12 for 15 with 3 home runs and that kind of stuff. So they came down one Saturday to show us or to film how John works out. And so John had me come over and all that kind of stuff. And I get on the mound, and I'm trying to impress them, and I want John to do well, but now we're taking this tennis ball, and now we're about 30 yards away from each other, and I'm throwing it as hard as I can. And he's, we got a little fence that you can hit it over. That was a home run. We had an area that was single and double, and they got there to show up, and I threw one, and he hit a home run, and John said, "Throw it harder." Yeah. And so I threw that thing as hard as I could, and he swung, hit that ball, line drive, 30 feet away, right in my eye, like the second pitch. But doing that little game with John taught me all the players' lineups. We had to research that. They had the Sporting News. You get in there and look at the Sporting News, see what the lineup was, find out, no, he's left-handed, and I couldn't wait till the box scores came out in the paper. That's kind of how I learned about baseball cards and stuff.
Well, one of you mentioned earlier, Steve Braun.
Yes.
And I was like twins. Like, yeah. That's what's crazy about knowing these cards. I can totally think the card. Or if you said today, name 3 twins, I'd be like, probably can't even name one.
Yeah, but true. But you showed Ed Kirkpatrick. You showed Ed Kirkpatrick, and I thought, okay, he was left unprotected when the expansion draft, and the Royals picked him up in the expansion draft.
Did they?
Yeah, that's how
here's another one of his cards. Look at this beauty.
The nice
edition.
Yep.
Sparky. I mean, hey, I knew to hold on to my cars. There'd be worth something someday.
I'd get that graded.
I just didn't know you weren't supposed to trash them.
Yeah.
Like I held on to them. But I look at Jake, who loves Sandlot. But I hate to say it, I bet you Jake never experienced Sandlot. Like when I was a kid, so I lived on half an acre. My next door neighbor had half an acre. We had this massive tree in between the property, oak or maple, whatever it was. So right field was closed. So you had left and center. If you hit it over that tree, it was a home run. And the age difference was probably 5 or 6 year span. And there were 2 girls that would play with us, which today, there's no way. My son, I said this in Mike's podcast, there's a kid right across the street, same age as my son. They don't even talk to each other. Or I'm like, why don't you go play with Tommy? Oh, he's a year younger than me. I'm like, seriously? Yeah. And then if we played football, we played everything.
Yep.
Basketball, roller hockey, football, the swing set was the field goal post. Got to kick it over the swing set. It wasn't even lined up with the field. We'd just play and say, okay, now we got to move over to here. And, oh man, those memories are so good. And then if no one was around, just my brother and I, we'd throw it up in the air, oh, you're out. And then he'd be in left field, and I'd whip it over to right field and go, oh, that's a hit. Yeah. Or I'd go in the backyard against our garage, and I'd throw it against the garage for a ground ball, or I'd bounce it short so it would pop up for hours. Yeah. And that's kind of what Sandlot is, even though Sandlot was in the 50s, but it wasn't much different in the 70s.
Yeah, I tell you, and some of my best when I get to see 1 or 2 of the people, there's some stories that really only 10 people were there, maybe, but it gets around so much.
But 80 people said they were there.
Oh, remember that? And people come to me. Remember, 50 of them. I was there. No, you weren't. You weren't even born there. You know.
I had that conversation with a guy today at the bank talking about these football games. He's like, there were 35 of us on that team, but there's 110 that claim they were.
that's
like,
how this.
Geez, I don't remember blocking for you.
Yeah, we had my Legion coach passed away, and this past or 2 years ago, and was at his funeral, and we were all this past year. A bunch of us were there, and there was a couple of us that were our sandlot, and my dad was minister of a church, and he was doing substituting at the church that was our sandlot. It was part of our yard that we played in. It was our backstop. A big old brick wall, and we're out there playing. It's Sunday night, and we're out there playing, and John's a smart guy, but he was always a good kid, well mannered. Just you'd want your sister to marry him, and anyway, he's throwing to me, and the church is the backstop, and he's working on this knuckle curve, and it's bouncing in the dirt, hitting on a brick wall, bouncing in the dirt, hitting the brick wall. Now, remember, my dad's inside preaching, but I'd already been to church Sunday morning at our normal church,
Yeah.
And we're not thinking right. We're not thinking I'm going to miss the ball,
Yeah.
And this guy comes out and says, "Hey, you kids, you need to stop that. You should be in church anyway." And John just looks at him straight in the eye and says, "Hey, I'm Catholic. I go on Saturdays." And at the time, it was funny. You just had to be there. But if you I got 5 friends that'll tell you that they were there because and they weren't. It was just me and John. Nobody else was there. So
yeah, there's so many stories like that. Like my mother, she'd yell out. She'd call me Donnie, and I go, "What?" We're playing ball. She goes, "You know what?" Which was dinner.
Yeah.
Right.
But so we had like a flat driveway and a little hill, which was all shrubs, and then we had the backyard. And I'll never forget this. My dad was messing around with us, and he was batting, and my dad fouled it off, and it bounced back on the cement right through the window in the garage door. We thought it was the greatest thing ever. We were just like, "Yeah, you broke it, not us. You're in trouble."
Yeah, and some of the life lessons you learn too.
Oh, I'll never forget
like
that. And I also remember playing catch with my dad, and I sucked. And I'm throwing it over his head, bouncing between his knees. He was old school. He threw it down his bed. It's like, "I've had enough of this." Literally went in the house. Where today you're trying to help your son and coach him. My dad's like, "Screw you.
Yeah.
Get the ball to me next time."
Yeah.
But
I was lucky. My dad was a big sports fanatic, and he never coached me. He coached guys my age for a long time.
Yeah, my dad never coached me either.
And it's just funny. He was an umpire for a long time, and I picture him now, and between an inning, he'd go up backstop while the pitcher was doing, while they were throwing the ball around and doing the warm-ups, and he'd be smoking a cigarette with a mask in one hand, smoking a cigarette, talking to anybody and everybody in the crowd.
Right.
And you'd never do that.
This was your father?
This is my father. Yeah, who was a Baptist minister, by the way.
Yeah.
Right.
And just stuff like that. And I was lucky to have a mom. I think she wanted me to have what she didn't have, and I think she wanted me to have the best collection ever as a kid. And my dad did not. I got a younger brother, about 12 years younger than me, and when he got, and so I wasn't around like you and your older brothers. I wasn't around him a whole lot. Growing up, I tried to be, but I went off to college, then started getting married. But my dad started collecting cards with him when he turned about 7 years old, and their finances changed. My dad's finances changed. He was a hard worker. and worked hard to make my life better. And my mom wanted me to play baseball so much and not work. So, I got up to mowing about 50 yards a summer. I got up having people helping me, hiring people to help me mow when I'm 15, 16 years old. And my mom she didn't want me to work going to college. And, if I got a little low on money, I tell a story that I'd sell a card or two to these two guys on campus, which is true. But really, my mom sacrificed a lot so I wouldn't have to work, and she wanted me to play baseball in college and not have to worry about,
Working,
flipping
right?
burgers to get by as a college student. And so, she would work, she would work for a veterinarian, and she'd give me her money, just to make sure I didn't. So I was lucky.
Chris, and John, it's funny how moms take care of their sons. My mom hooked my brother and I out with cards, and I said this in Mike's podcast. We would go out to breakfast, but not until my dad left for work, and we were not allowed to tell him that she would take us out. We did that for years. And I look at my wife with our son. It's funny because we started, our two oldest are girls. And when my wife got pregnant with our son, she's like, Don, I don't know what I'm going to do with him. I'm used to girls. I don't know what to do with a boy. And this boy that's now almost 18 can do no frickin' wrong. That's mama's little baby. And it's just, what? Moms have our back. Dads they're great and they're tough on us, but mom's going to take care of you.
Well, with my mom, she in a way, she was very influential in my beginning passion of baseball cards. Because the one card that's special to me, I don't want to get too into it because I have an upcoming video that I want to talk about. But when I was in Little League, she would hang around with the other parents while the kids were practicing. And it was during that time where she was talking with some of the other moms, and they were like, "Hey, does your son collect baseball cards?" And she's like, "Yeah, he has some." And like, "Hey, you really need to look for." This was in the early '80s when Donruss and Flair just came out. Hey, there were a lot of these error cards that were misprinted, and they fixed them. So one says this, and then the corrected one has that. And they were talking about that these cards, they're worth. I mean, back then they were worth maybe $2-3 or whatever.
Right.
When you buy a pack of cards for 25 cents, a card that's worth $2 or $3 is big.
Sure.
And so she wrote down some notes on, oh, wait, look for this 1981 Fleer Reggie Jackson that has the wrong card number on the back or something like that.
Huh.
And so I went through my cards, and I didn't have many, but I had one. And that just meant the world to me that I had this one card. And because my mom took the time to ask the questions to be interested, like, really, this is hey, and she wrote down the stuff. And I actually have the note. Let's see if I can do the solo layout here. I have the note. This is my mom's handwriting in a note of all those errors that she got from some of the other moms of kids that I was playing Little League with. So there's the Reggie Jackson, the 645 should be card number 79. I think should be 645 or something.
Mm-hmm.
So this is from definitely 19, and there's Schaefer's cards. That was the local card shop. There's that no number Schmidt from 81 Flair, I think. So this
and
was
then your mom signed it on the bottom there, John?
Huh?
Is that your mom's signature on the bottom corner there?
No, that is for the bump wills. The air.
Okay.
79 tops. So
Do you remember what was wrong with the bump wheels?
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you? Okay.
It was the different team name on the front.
It was Toronto instead of the Rangers.
Rangers.
And I
that's
had
cool, John. Though that's what I was talking about. That your mom took the time to do that for you.
Yeah.
But that's
Yeah, and I can't believe I still had. I found this in a shoebox. That's how I stored my cards, in a shoebox.
Right.
And
Have you shown it to her?
I don't. Oh yeah, and she's like, I can't believe you kept that. I'm like, I don't know how I still had it. It's all, you could tell it's all folded up. It was folded up to the size of a card, and somehow I had just had it in one of the columns of cards, and
So
I never threw it
John,
away.
I know you told the story about your grandma dating this one guy that made the major leagues. Was that your mom's mother? Or
Yes.
your father?
Yeah.
So that
and so
even ties into all that.
in fact, normally, like what Chris you were saying, and maybe Don to some extent, your dad was passionate about baseball and sports. My dad really wasn't.
Mine wasn't either.
My mom had baseball cards in the 50s, early to mid 50s. She was born in 43. And she remembers, with some of the kids in her neighborhood, boys and girls alike, they'd get packs of cards and they'd set them up on the garage door. And they'd stand back and they'd flip. And if you could knock some cards down, you got to keep them. So the corners, but she collected, it would have been around that 54 to 55 time frame. And her parents were ones, they lived a very simple, basic life, didn't like clutter. If you didn't play with something, toys, whatever,
they pitched
you got thrown away, and the cards disappeared.
Right.
But she probably would have had the way she talked about in the number of cards that she had, it's very likely she may have had possibly even a 52 mantle. She's not sure, but she can't quite remember what some of the cards were.
Right.
But you never know. We'll never know. But
right. Right.
Yeah.
Fun to
So
think
I
like
think
that.
she had that experience, and when I started getting interested, so she would be the one where for my birthday or for Christmas, hey, John needs the 1984 complete set because he's had the 80, 81, 82, and let's continue. And so my dad, though, very quickly, his one contribution to my collection, and I think I still have it here. Well, I'll find it anyway. I mentioned that Schaefer's card shop. It's one of the, if not the oldest, continually operating card shop in the country. I think they started in 77 or 78, and they've been in business ever since.
Is this the card shop where you met Eric?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And at the time, he had just a small little store, but he went to the local flea market and set up his stand and stuff.
Sure.
And I remember this was around the time of 86, because the big rookie card was the Jose Canseco. And I forget, they were going for like $12, $15, something like that. I don't know. And I don't know if I had one or not, but I wanted my dad to take me to the flea market because I wanted to maybe buy some cards. And we're going around, and I don't know. I couldn't decide what I wanted to get. I don't think I had a whole lot of money. And he had a display case of vintage cards. And he's like, John, this is my dad, John, come over here. And again, my dad didn't follow baseball a lot or whatever, but he's like, hey, look at this card. And it was a 1948 Bowman. And I think I have it here as I talk about it. But he's like, hey, this is a red Shandiest. I think he was a Hall of Famer, and the the card dealer was like, yep, this is a Hall of Fame card. He's like, hey, well, maybe you should get this. I know it's an older card, but maybe you should get it. And I was like, I don't know. And I decided to pick it up, and that was my first vintage card. And it's not in great condition. Never had it graded. It would probably grade a 1 because it has, let's see here. It has some writing on it, but it's a Red Shandiest rookie card. There was some writing down there in pencil that someone erased. I didn't erase it, but it's off center. But, it's a Red Shandiest rookie
Yeah,
card
it's
from
not
48
bad.
Bowman.
Sure.
And my dad recommended that I got, and I think I paid $6 or $8 for it, something like that, back in the mid 80s. So that was my dad's contribution to my collection. And in a way, this started my interest, even though for the longest time I'd been collecting Wade Boggs cards. I always loved vintage. And this was my very first vintage card, and it was because of my dad. And my early love for cards was because of my mom.
It's funny, I know we all have a son, and I could be wrong on this, but I believe none of them collect. I know mine doesn't. It's just
Mine did.
okay.
For starting, I don't know, maybe when he was 6 or 7, maybe
Yeah.
I'd show him the cards that I'd pick up. He's like, "Well, what's this and what's that?" And he liked the Yankees. I'm not sure exactly how he got onto the Yankees, but for his birthday, or whatever, I would get him a Lou Gehrig game used bat card or a jersey card, or I think one year I got him a Babe Ruth bat card. And so he has some of the big Yankees. Now they were modern cards.
Right.
He doesn't really have many vintage cards, but what he would do is he'd go through my boxes of cards, and most of them were commons. I had some minor stars, but the cards, even for the big stars now, they're like 50 cents card, the 25-cent cards.
Right.
But he'd go through and he goes, "Dad," he says, can I have some of these cards?" And I look through, and he just picked some random players that he thought were cool, or maybe some Yankees. And I'm like, yeah, you can have them. So he has his own. I still have him separated in his own box, but he's long since. He used to go into the card shop every once in a while and want to buy some cards and look through the binders, and he'd pick some players out. But then he got into the band and high school and all that stuff, and none of his other friends collected cards.
Right.
But he knows that all of this stuff will eventually become his. And every once in a while, when he'll be home for the summer or this, I'd show him some new pickups, and he'd be like, "Oh, that's a cool, like a vintage card. Oh, wow, that's really cool." And well, what else did you get? And so he'll look through some of my stuff,
right,
and knows the time and effort and money that I've put into this collection and how much it means to me. So I know eventually when I'm gone and all this becomes his problem to deal with,
right.
I think he's not necessarily going to see it as a burden, hopefully, but recognize the passion that I had for my collection, and know that I'd be fine with him selling it. I mean, the purpose isn't for him to keep it as well, but who knows? He may be able to do something with his family at the time, with my collection. But I definitely know he would appreciate what I have, and he still has. I have them right now, but they're still his cards. I always tell him, Colin, these are your cards. If you ever need them or want them to sell them, or
Right.
who knows, because I'm sure his cards are probably worth a few $100s with some of those special cards.
Well, I honestly believe there's something in the genes. Like even as a kid, I would collect keychains, patches. Like I collected all kinds of stuff, and my dad collected stamps. And so my wife said to me, a few months ago, "You see all the stuff in Quinn's room?" And it's like a bunch of Spider-Man figurines, and so I'm like,
Nope.
I said, "Yeah, he's a collector.
Yeah,
it's not what I collect, but he's a collector."
Yeah. Well,
she's like, "Well, why does he want all this stuff?" I'm like, "Because it means something to him."
Yeah.
Well, my son my son's adopted from Russia. Okay. And reason he's adopted from Russia is I wanted me a 7-foot tall basketball player or a baseball player. But what I ended up getting
baseball player from Russia, dude. You need to go down to the Dominican Republic.
I got him at 1.5 years old. I could have made him a switch hitter like my dad couldn't me.
You mean a pitch hitter?
But he couldn't. He has no competitive bone in his body. He can play 8 different instruments and sings and that kind of stuff. But But I was a coach. I wanted that doesn't mean anything to me. I wanted to know what his free throw percentage was. But and then my
Apparently
daughter,
zero.
yeah, my daughter doesn't care about the cards either. But she was a big help when I first got VCP because she helped me inventory,
Mm.
put sleeves on.
No, you mean she helped you log in,
Yes.
set up a username, a password.
Yeah.
She did all the hard work. But anyway, so she does that, and so I'll go to a show and I'll pick her up something like last show I went to that I got her something. I got her an Abe Lincoln card, an older antique, an older vintage card,
Right.
and she has a couple graded. One of the things we do share is from for a long time is Marvel movies, that kind of stuff, and we've gone to the movie theater to see every Marvel recent
That's what
movie.
my son's into, Marvel. So yeah.
Okay, okay, and so my daughter and I do that, and so she does have some a couple comic books, but she has a couple graded encased cards that she likes, so I'll bring that to her. But this there when I something happens to me, we have plans and stuff for what happens to my collection.
It's going up to Pittsburgh, right?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Well,
Yeah.
I
my
will take good care of it, buddy.
Okay.
my
appreciate it.
grandfather on my dad's side. So you were talking about sort of it's in the genes and stuff. Now, not my dad. It sort of skipped a generation, but my grandfather on my dad's side collected a whole bunch of stuff. He was a local attorney, not a real trial attorney, more like a transactional for deeds and trusts and things like transactional. Anyway, he would go around to different estate sales, and so he would buy books. He liked just different books, so he had like a little library in his den. So that was one thing. He collected coins. He started the subscription to Life magazine back in the first issue was either 1936 or 1939. He kept up in his attic every single Life magazine from the first issue. And the reason why I know that is one summer I helped my grandmother. I went up in the attic in the summer and I organized them all.
Oh, that must have
He
been
had
nice.
them in
It wasn't
huge
too hot,
boxes.
right?
Huh?
It wasn't too hot up there in the summer.
Yeah,
in an attic.
it was. But everything from like 1939 to like 1978 or 79, every single issue he kept. He kept old detective novels from the 50s and 40s and some little dime mystery novels. He would have like some early issue comic books and stuff. He'd stop by the newsstand and say, "Hey, if there's any first issue magazine or comic book, set it aside. I'll pick it up next week or whatever." And so he dabbled in little collection. His coin collection really wasn't worth a whole lot. He didn't have anything super rare. But he just enjoyed that collecting aspect. He liked little collections. And I always helped him with coins. I'd come over to his house every once in a while, and he'd go to the bank and spend $10 and get $10 worth of quarters. And he'd go, "Okay, John, I'm looking for a 1973 with a P on it. So look through all the quarters." And so I'd help him look through the quarters. And every once in a while, we'd find one and he'd put it in his book. And so that was like the collecting mentality that I think I picked up from him.
Yeah.
So, hey, before we wrap up here, we are around an hour here. I do have a trivia question, and it's based on the 70s, since we've been talking about the 70s time frame of roughly when we all started. I don't think I asked this question before, but if I have, I can switch to something else. So let's see if you two can get this. Thinking of the decades of the 70s, who hit the most home runs in the major leagues from 1970 to 1979? That was Chris with the hand up first.
Okay, so that's either Willie Stargell in the National League and Reggie Jackson in the American League.
I think it's Willie's. Wait. Hold on a minute. Before I answer, I spit it out.
And the RBIs was was, I believe, Johnny Bench in the National League. He had one of those home runs or the
That-
RBI.
I think it was this guy.
You both are right. It was Willie Stargell. He hit
Give me some,
296
Chris.
home
Right there,
runs
baby.
in the decade. Reggie Jackson was number 2, so he would have been in the American League. 292. Then Johnny Bench at 290 and Bobby Bonds at 280. And I think, Chris, you are right, because that was, I think, maybe going to be my backup trivia question. I think Johnny Bench had the most RBIs in the 70s.
Those are top 4. I wonder where Dave Kingman fit in. When was his rookie year?
72.
Yeah.
Or no, 71
That's
is his card. I think
Okay.
so.
He
Right.
probably
The
started
border.
in 70.
So
I
70.
mean, George, I don't know when George Foster's rub because he did well in the late 70s, but I don't know how.
Foster, same way. Foster didn't start for the Reds until 74.
Okay. Yeah, so they didn't have
In
so-
74, he didn't have very many home runs. 75, he might have had like
What year did he hit 50?
77.
77. Okay.
But if
So
you
he
think
was-
about it,
He was runner up. Foster was runner up for the MVP in 76. And then he back to back. He followed. He was runner up and then MVP, or he's MVP and then runner up. But I think he hit 52 home runs in 77.
But if you think about it, there weren't too many players that maybe started their career in the late 60s that played through the entire decade of the 70s, sort of in their prime, all the way through. You got some players that, they started in 74, or
Well, there were
they
a lot
ended
of
their
pitchers.
career in 75,
There were
or
a ton
like
of
Hank
pitchers
Aaron.
that did.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, you got Reggie Jackson, but if you look at pitchers, you got Phil Negro, Jim Palmer, Don Sutton.
I'm talking about for home runs.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
so
they
for home
you know,
runs, you have
had
because
some
Reggie
really-
Jackson was 69,
Yeah.
Willie Stargell was 63,
63.
64,
No,
but he
63.
played well into
His
through the
rookie was
70s.
63.
Yeah,
That's a floating hit.
But you had some great hitters that, started earlier, like Yastrzemski made it all the way through, and McCovey made it all the way through. And
yeah,
True.
McCovey could have
Stargell.
been on that list, but wasn't in the top 5 though.
But you get guys, McCovey played in 4 different decades. And so
Yeah.
he started wearing down.
Well, that's
So-
true.
So, Don, do you ever tell a trivia? Do you ever have a trivia question when you guys do this?
I do. I usually stump John, but
Yeah.
I don't have
It's
one.
not
tonight.
it's not that hard to stump me. But
So I like telling this one just because I've told it a lot. I told it a lot, but Walter Johnson was the first guy to get 3,000 strikeouts in 1909. When he played back in the day.
Yep.
Who was the second person to get 3,000 strikeouts?
Cy Young?
second person, Steve Carlton.
Oh, no way.
It is not Steve Carlton, but the answer is going to surprise you.
All right, so it's not Cy Young. Don't give us the answer yet.
Okay.
Wait a minute.
Think
Okay,
of
so
all
the
the good pitchers throughout the time.
Warren Spahn.
Great guess, but no.
Was it in the major leagues?
Yes. Yes.
Okay,
That's
so
gonna go
not a
back
trick
to Paige.
question. All right.
Oh, yeah.
So the next to 3,000.
Carl Hubble.
Another good guess, but no.
Feller didn't get to 3,000.
No, Feller had like 2,600 and he missed
Yeah.
5 years.
All right, give us
Yeah.
another clue.
Don
Uh,
Sutton.
He's a national leaguer.
It's not Don Sutton.
It is not Don Sutton. Because look at Don Sutton's. Don Sutton. It took him a long time to get there.
Yeah.
National leader.
Gibson? No.
Bob Gibson is the second person to get
Really?
3,000 strikeouts.
I
You
would-
think with guys like Warren Spahn and
Yeah.
Grover Cleveland, but Bob Feller would have definitely got it. There's
Yep.
he
Yeah, the
struck out
WAR.
280. His then yeah, he'd have definitely got it. But yeah, Bob Gibson was the second person to ever get 3,000 strikeouts.
Wow.
So it went from Walter Johnson to
Johnson.
Gibson.
Yes.
Wow.
Huge span.
And look at all those great Christy Mathewson and all those
Right.
great pitchers. Yeah.
So the war basically halted that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Ted Williams didn't even get to 3,000 hits.
Yeah,
That's correct.
Because I mean, you would think one of the greatest hitters or the greatest hitter of all time, and with the high average, you would think he'd have all those hits. You'd think he'd be well over 3,000, but it's because he missed all those years that he never did. Technically, he's not part of the 3,000 hit club.
We've gone for 2 wars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He missed those, but also somebody like Babe Ruth who batted 340 sometimes and stuff.
Yeah.
You would think he would have, because he played
Yeah.
a long time. He didn't get 3,000 hits.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Just shows you how great Wade Boggs was.
Who?
Wade Boggs.
Who did he play for?
yeah.
I don't know. Some Boston team, I think. The Bean Eaters or something. Or
Oh, the good old
So John, I went to a ball game. The Royals were playing the Red Sox in Kansas City, and Kevin Seitzer was a rookie, and he had 240 hits or something as rookie. I mean, I don't know how many hits he had, but he didn't win the Rookie of the Year because Mark McGwire won the Rookie of the Year.
Okay.
But he's had such a good rookie year. And we had seats at the third base side, and it was perfect.
Yes, John, we had seats in the third base line.
Yeah, and drinking
Drink champagne and caviar.
And I asked the Red Sox coach to get out of my way.
Of course. Yeah,
but there was a play where Wade Boggs grounded to Kevin Seitzer, and I took a picture, and it had Kevin Seitzer throwing the ball to first base, and George Brett was playing first, and Wade Boggs, and they were the only 3 people in the frame. Wow. And I so wished at the time that Kevin Seitzer would have panned out to be somebody. I mean, a great player.
Yeah, that would have been pretty cool.
Yeah,
that would have.
Well, we are about around a little bit over an hour. We try to keep these, something reasonable. I'm sure we could talk for several more hours about different subjects. We managed to talk a whole hour on sort of the origins of how we started our collections, got passionate about cards, interested in cards, a couple other subjects as well. So there's a great conversation. We haven't had any. This is only our 11th episode. We haven't had any duplicate guests on, but if we do ever do that, I'm sure Chris, you'll be one of the ones that we have on again because there's so many things that we can talk about. So we really appreciate.
I'm not inviting them.
Well, okay. Well, see, Chris was my pick. So next episode, Don, you get to pick, and I think you already have someone.
I already have someone lined up. I'm ready to roll.
I'm not too sure about your pick, to be honest with you, but we'll see. We'll maybe struggle through that.
Hey, John, I have a question for you. You think I give a shit?
No.
Okay. Just asking.
Yep. So we have so Chris, thanks again for coming on. Had a great time. Really enjoyed talking about the hobby and stuff. Yeah, you have.
So before you let me go, here in a week or 2 weeks, I've been on here a year, and I want to say with the exception of Mike Moynihan, the first one to ever reach out for me was that 6'5" squirrely guy down there, and it feels like we've known each other for a long time. But I really appreciate both you and John to welcome me in the hobby, and how cool is this, man? I got to go to Strongsville, which is one of the greatest shows, and stay with you, Don, and went to the National and got to stay with you, John. So, I really appreciate it. And then all seriousness, really do.
Yeah. I know we joke around and all this stuff, but seriously, it's been great to know you since you've been on, and I'm really glad you got the push to get on to YouTube, because without that, I'm not sure we would have ever crossed paths. And so it's just been a pleasure to get to know you within this hobby, but beyond cards as well, just as a person. You're great, and yeah, so are you, Don.
Yeah. Okay. And enough about Chris. Let's end this.
Enough about Chris. Yeah. So yeah, with that, hey, if you guys have been watching through this point, we appreciate that. Who knows? Maybe if you didn't even get halfway through it, but Chris, thanks again for being on, and we will catch everyone the next time we decide to do another one of these with Don's special guest. And with that, thanks for watching.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.